First things first, New York is a very, very buzzy place to be right now. Vibes are on 10, I feel like, after the Knicks win. And you somehow are a Bulls fan stuck in New York during this time?
Yeah, surrounded by, Knicks fans, family, friends, the whole thing. I'm very happy for them. I've always felt like the Bulls have come out on the top of if there was any kind of rivalry between the Bulls and the Knicks. So I've never really felt any tension there. Always looked at them like maybe like step family. So happy for all my friends and family, but I'm excited with the new direction of the Chicago Bulls.
Okay, we need to know how excited you are. What did you think of the draft and the fact that they end up with a couple of players in the lottery, but then don't do anything as far as taking players from this year's class after that?
Well, they got Caleb Wilson, and that's what is important here. Caleb Wilson was a guy that I was outrageously excited about before the college season when he was being ranked more in like the 10 to 14 range. I went on multiple shows saying that this was the guy who was going to crash the party and be up there at the top three. Probably one of my better calls in the preseason because I just saw a guy who's 6'10", freak athlete, real feel, can pass the ball. And if you go back and you watch him in high school, there's a lot of self-creation there that he didn't necessarily get to show at North Carolina because while he had a lot of freedom to do stuff, he still was playing in a system and a role. And I think that the NBA game is going to be more conducive to a lot of the creation that I think he can handle from the perimeter and initiating ball screens, really slick passer. Height allows him to see over the defense, can make passes, multiple passes away. And then the two-way ability. I mean, this is an unbelievable haul. I was in Chicago for the Combine when the Bulls jumped up. So that was an exciting time and place to be in for that serendipitous moment. But Caleb is really exciting. I mean, if that was all they walked away with, that's a big win in the draft. You add in Dailyn Swain, who being in New York, being a Big East guy, I've gotten to see Dailyn a ton in person from his time at Xavier. Then he played a completely different role at Texas, where he was doing a lot more self-creation instead of being kind of like a guy who was playing more like a role player. And honestly, he kind of looked a lot like maybe a Stephen Castle. I think Castle is a better prospect. He came out as a freshman. Swain is a youngish junior, but I think that's the kind of role that he can grow into as he kind of hones in his shot. So you add in those two guys, I mean, that's a haul. The second round, I mean, you can say that there's some value to be had there. There always is. But, with the amount of money in the NIL landscape, there were so many guys who would typically make the second round worth really going after who went back to school to secure a bag. So I'm not really too upset with the fact that they focused on the first round and brought in two guys that fit that slap philosophy. I think they're really exciting prospects who are going to be excellent pros.
We are talking with Corey Tulaba, aka NBA draft dude, here on Rahimi, Harris, and Grote. And I also want to ask you about the concept of getting Caleb Wilson versus making the right pick at 4th overall. How much of this for you is Caleb Wilson as a fit for the Bulls, and how much was it this was the right player at number 4 for you when it comes to this draft consideration?
Yeah, I actually had Caleb 3rd on my big board. So to me, the Bulls walked away at an advantage there. But I mean, look, fit. I don't know if Caleb is a cleanish fit on the Bulls roster. I mean, you look at Modest Buzelis, you look at Noah Senge. I mean, Patrick Williams' contract is still on the roster. There's a lot of positional overlap with where Caleb's going to play. But with a talent like him, you don't worry about that. You just go and get your guy. The general consensus felt like he was the 4th best available. We'll see. I mean, that's certainly possible. This is an incredibly talented group. But I feel like they got the right guy. This was an easy decision. And to be completely honest, this was a decision where if they went in any other direction here, it's like one of those things, bringing it back to my New York side, where you go, you know what? It might not be a front office thing. This might be a thing where we got to back off the Bulls until the ownership group is out. So I'm happy that the front office did the right thing and actually went and got the guy who can actually change this franchise.
Corey Tulaba joining us here on Rahimi Harris and Grote Layla Rahimi. Marshall Harris here with you, guiding you through the 1 o'clock hour and talking about the NBA draft. Who were your top 4 in order, and why did you have Caleb at 3 as opposed to the 4, which you said most people did have him at 4?
So I had Cam Boozer at number 1. This is a guy who I think you're going to look back in this draft and him going 3, and it's going to feel similar to Luka Doncic, where you just go, you know what? We said he couldn't do this. We said he couldn't do that. And ultimately, the guy just keeps on winning and proving that he's the best player. Cam's been the best player all through high school. He's won almost everything except for the national title, but he's won every award. He won 4 state championships. He won a national championship in high school. He won all of the Nike EYBL championships. Like, all the dude does is win. He's 6'9", 6'10", with a 1.5 inch wingspan, 250 pounds, and he's a genius decision maker on the court who just happened to put up a 22, 11, and 4.5 season as a freshman, and basically broke the advanced analytics models for as long as we have them, dating back to about 2008. So he, to me, has always been the best player. And, speaking with scouts, a lot of scouts were like, at a certain point, if you're the best guy from high school to college, you might just end up being the best guy in the pros too. I think he's going to be the best guy. I had AJ DeBonce at 2. He was a guy who I've been a little skeptical on throughout the year, just because I think defensively he has a lot of room to grow, especially as an off-ball guy. On the ball, he competes. He's a good rebounder, but off the ball, you can really take advantage of him because he's not necessarily in tune with, defending in multiple actions and placement with where he's at. But I got a chance to go watch some pre-draft stuff, him work out in LA a few months ago, and the workouts that he was being put in with Zach Gonzalez, who's a big time pro trainer. It kind of blew me away. And I've seen him in person at the Nike Hoop Summit multiple years. I've seen him in games in college in person, including in the Garden where he dropped 25 in the second half. And honestly, his workout was one of the most impressive moments I've had with him. Just seeing like what they're focusing on to help him get better at the NBA level. So he ended up at number 2 on my board. He's 6'10". He averaged 25.5 points per game as a freshman. I mean, he's a stud. Caleb at 3. And then at 4, I went with Darren. And Darren was my number 1 guy coming into the year. And, I'm a little nervous with my ranking of him. This was a weird year for him. He dealt with the injuries. He dealt with the creatine body cramps. It never really felt like he was the athlete that he was in high school. Because when I saw him in high school, I'd never really seen a guard move the way he moved on the court. It was like he was ice skating while everybody else was running around. It was different. And he's an effortless scorer. He showed that every minute he was on the floor. And from everything I've heard, his injury stuff, there's nothing to worry about there. He still put up analytically the best guard season on record, even with all of that. So he's going to be incredible. But there is a hint of just like personality. He mentioned all the anxiety that he went through, having dealt with the full body cramps. And so maybe there's a little bit of that, like wondering like, okay, like, is he going to be fully good mentally throughout the rigors of an NBA career, all of the stress, all of the pressure when he does deal with, possibly a lower body injury? Does that bring anything back? I don't think this is a Ben Simmons situation. This is just, such a special class. Darren goes 1 in most drafts. He's unbelievable. I would have been excited if he ended up in Chicago, but when you have such a talented group at the top, you got to take certain variables into consideration.
The NBA draft dude, Corey Tulaba, is on our show right now with Rahimi Harrison Grote. You were at the Combine, you said. So what stood out to you either from Caleb Wilson or just some of the other draft picks that you've talked about?
The Combine, I think, is just mostly interesting because all of the decision makers around the league are all in one place. And that's kind of like the main thing that I try to do. I also get with a lot of the prospects. I did a couple of interviews there with some of the guys, but I think just seeing these guys all run through the drills and look healthy and just getting to their actual measurements, to me, that's probably the most interesting thing about the Combine. These colleges are not exactly honest all the time.
Yeah.
Much like a high school football program, right?
Yeah.
So as far as like the on-court stuff, I mostly am not super concerned until it's the scrimmages. But I think ultimately the measurements are the most important thing to me, just because we finally get to see, okay, how tall are these guys? I mean, I wish that they had these guys measuring in shoes, maybe because they play basketball in shoes, and now we got to guess on what their height is going to be when they're actually playing. But you add an inch and an inch and a quarter to their listed heights, you can figure it out by doing the math. But I love seeing their actual wingspans, their weights, all that stuff. There's no lying now, like there used to be, where the top prospects could choose not to participate in any of that stuff. Now it's all on the table, and I think that's really important. Not only for now, but just when we get to look historically and, any of the draft models that come out, things like that throughout the years, the more information you have on with that kind of information that you can't just get from looking at their sports reference page, I think it's going to be really important.
I know you're happy with what happened with that first pick, but I got to ask you, at number 15, who would you have taken if you were the Bulls in that situation? And how many other players would you have preferred over Dailyn Swain?
I probably would have preferred Cameron Carr, who ended up going 24th, drafted by the Knicks, traded to the Lakers. But I completely get why, if you're using the slap philosophy, that Dailyn Swain is the guy that you roll with. I liked Swain a lot. Cam Carr, I thought he reminded me of Mikal Bridges, and I trust his jumper a lot more than I trusted Dailyn Swain's, who definitely improved this year, especially late clock situations off the bounce. So I probably would have gone Cam Carr. I would have gone LeBaron Philon as well, another guy who kind of dropped a little bit. He went 22 to Philly. But again, I understand why maybe he dropped a little. He came in 1 pound heavier than he was last year. And ultimately, I don't think being a small guard is disqualifying. We just saw Jalen Brunson lead a team to a championship as a small guard. But the thing about Jalen Brunson is that he weighs 200 pounds. He weighed 200 pounds coming out of college. LeBaron Philon weighed 176. So I think the weight and the strength is a really big deal in the modern NBA. So I understand why Philon, maybe there were some skeptics. I think he was such a brilliant self-creator that I thought he would have been interesting. But those are probably the two guys that I'd be like, man, I could see those guys really hitting in a big way. But I think Swain's great, man. Like I think he's a tough fit with Josh Giddey. And I do question Giddey's long-term future in Chicago. He's on a pretty good deal for what he could bring to a team. Ultimately, this team is going to need to find pieces that fit a little bit cleaner. When you're in a rebuild, you don't necessarily worry about that stuff. But at the same time, just bringing talent in the door isn't going to be enough to develop these guys to their ultimate potential. They do need to find complementary pieces. And, Giddey, Swain, Caleb shot 27% on barely any threes this year. Modis definitely improved as a shooter, but I don't think anybody is like terrified of him shooting yet. I think we're going to need to bring in some long-term pieces who can actually space the floor at an NBA level. But we don't worry about that. The fit is what it is. I don't think it's going to be super clean in year one with all of these guys, and that might lead people to form opinions. But once the bigger picture starts clearing up, I think Dailyn's going to be a great pick, even if I would have went in potentially a different direction.
Corey Tulaba, the NBA draft dude, is on with us on Rahimi, Harris, and Grote. Corey, we talked a lot about the meaning of the second round and just how we saw so many of those picks be just outright fungible for teams yesterday. Teams trading in and out at will, cash considerations, making a huge comeback here in Chicago. Yeah. What did you think of just the overall message it seemed about the value of these second round draft picks yesterday?
Yeah, cash considerations are undefeated in Chicago. I mean,
we're defeated depending on how you look at Jordan Bell.
Right. I think the second round is just really weird because once you get past, pick 35, now you're at the point where agents are trying to go like, hey, like we have a two-way, a guaranteed contract at this spot. Don't draft our guy. Or you have agents who are like, hey, we don't even want to be drafted. We'd rather just choose our own spot. Famously, Austin Reeves, who just signed, the biggest free agent deal for any player who ever went undrafted, where he famously was going to get drafted by Detroit, and his agency said, hey, we think we have a better spot. So there's a lot of politics in it. And I don't necessarily think there's anybody who you're going to look at and be like, man, we're going to regret not bringing him into our building right now. So if you're going to get future value, different assets to come in that you can use in different scenarios, I mean, I think it's a fine strategy. I wasn't like floored that they moved the picks. Like even once Braden Smith, once that pick was made, I was like, oh, there's no way he's staying here.
Really?
That's on the move. And to be honest, I was kind of like, I hope I'm wrong, because I love Braden despite all of his size issues. I watched film with him a couple of weeks ago. I think he's brilliant. He's a competitor. He would have been a great culture guy. But I figured it was on the move just philosophically based on the slap thing. But yeah, I mean, there are some guys that I would have liked to bring in, but no, there's nobody that I'm like, I can't believe we didn't bring him in.
Well, that's great to hear. And this has been a lot of fun talking to you. Corey Tulaba, NBA draft dude. He is at Corey Tulaba on Twitter and curator of Vibes No Ceilings. You can catch Vibes No Ceilings available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. This has been great. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks for having me, guys.